We're going to stay in Arizona because today is a very important deadline having to do with the midterm elections. That, of course, is the certification for the election deadline, November the 28th, today, for so many of the counties here in Arizona. Let's put up this tweet from Fox 10 reporter Marissa Sarbach. She says, Cochise County is officially the only county in the state not to certify their election results, and we're going to be speaking with her momentarily. So this is the deadline set by Arizona law for counties within the state to approve the official tally of votes for the 2022 midterm election, a process that is also known as the canvass. Well, earlier today, people in public comment sections in Maricopa County at their board meeting today voiced their concerns. Some voiced their opposition to some who thought that many voters in Maricopa County, especially, were disenfranchised. So we're going to hear some of them speak to the board members there in Maricopa County.
Florida did just that.
And when you say did just that, it would rig an election?
It would flip the vote 51-49. Pick whoever you wanted it to go to and whichever race you wanted to win.
And would that program that you designed be something that elections officials that might be on county boards of elections could detect?
They'd never see it.
Mr. Would you answer that question once again?
They would never see it.
So I'm giving you that as a testimony before a judge. That is a man who helped rig an election. We know that that still exists. You know that still exists. I went to go vote. I didn't get to turn mine in. The man in front of me couldn't turn his in. The man behind me couldn't turn theirs in. And guess what? I checked on my vote. It never went through. You have heard from many people in charge of the election. We are coming to you asking you to dig deep in your heart and not be condemned to hell one day. And why am I saying that? Because I'm a party person? I don't have a party. I'm an independent. I'm the outcast. But you know what? I'm standing here for the Constitution of the United States. And you guys are who we're looking to. Sheriff's Department. You know why I praise you? Because you don't stand up under these people. You stand up under the Constitution of the United States of America. And without us standing up under that, we have nothing. Nothing. They've already taken people's countries away. Venezuela, Dominion machine. You guys know they're dangerous. You know they're corrupt. Please dig deep in your heart.
Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Your time is up.
Your time should be up.
Next, and then I'd like to call up Veronica Corcoran and Gail Golick over here in line, and then Janelle Weaver. Thank you for joining us. If you could please state your address.
Hello, I'm Janelle Weaver. I live in Goodyear. I was a poll observer in Tonopah at the Valley Baptist Church on Election Day. I was there at 5:40 in the morning, so I saw the opening procedures, and I left at about 1:40. From the start, both tabulators were not working. I was told by the workers that the second machine wasn't working the night before during a test run, but the first one had ran perfectly until the morning. Maricopa County was notified about the second tabulator not working, and they were told that the county would send them one first thing in the morning. By the time I left at 1:40, there was not a second tabulator that was working. The inspector surmised that perhaps it was the printers that were the problem, and they were trying to figure that out. At 7:17 a.m., that's an hour and 17 minutes after the polls had opened, the first tabulator was working, but was only processing 1 out of 5 ballots. That's about 20, at about 8:30, only 20.
Okay, so we just wanted to give you a sense of some of these concerned citizens in Maricopa County voicing their opposition, their protestations to the board there about problems, alleged problems that they experienced when they went to vote on Election Day, albeit the Maricopa County Board voted unanimously, to certify the county's vote. Let's talk about this even further. I'm Andrew Kraft yet again. We want to be joined by Fox 10 Phoenix reporter Steve Nielsen. He's been reporting on that meeting that you were just watching from earlier today. And Steve, thanks so much for being with us. This was quite wild, quite raucous. A lot of allegations thrown out there by some of these individuals and citizens who came for public comment. But what ultimately does it mean?
Well, that's a great question going forward on what it means. What I can tell you is that the passion has remained since Election Day for a lot of the people that spoke. We were here just about a week and a half ago when there was another one of these meetings, the first Board of Supervisors meeting that took place here after the election. It wasn't about certifying the election, but they had public comments. And they heard about an hour and a half of public comments that day. And a lot of the same speakers that day also spoke today, and they said a lot of the same things. They're very upset. They don't think that the election should be certified. They want a new election. Those things aren't going to happen. The election was certified today. That's where maybe there'll be legal challenges going forward. We'll see what develops there. But as far as how this meeting went today, at times, Andrew, it got very loud.
Long lines outside led to at-capacity seating inside the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors meeting. Before public comments, recorder Stephen Richer updated on how early voting went.
Fighting over conspiracy theories promoted on social media by people who know nothing about...
Okay, all right. I've asked you before, please do not boo, do not cheer. Let's let recorder Richer speak.
Don't sit here and label people here.
We can...
No, okay, again.
Much of the public commentary went like that as Chairman Bill Gates tried to quiet the crowd. Many claimed the vote should have been thrown out because printer issues disenfranchised voters, they claimed.
I was one of those voters disenfranchised in Wickenburg and Maricopa County. I tried to vote in person.
But she later admitted, despite the printer issue, her vote was counted. The words grew angrier and angrier for some.
Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make a violent revolution necessary.
It's disgusting. Watching you pledge allegiance to my flag was disgusting, the way that you sold us out.
This is a war between good and evil, and you all represent evil, including you. I want to look in your eyes, especially you. I see the way that you look at people when they come up here and speak truth. Such arrogance dripping from your mouth, just like the smile on your face.
Several spoke in support of the election process.
Even in the face of misinformation, intimidation, and threats, which I feel that I heard today at this podium and is unacceptable, you are here with courage.
Once the board presented responses to the issues raised by the crowd, the vast majority left and didn't listen to the evidence.
And again, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors unanimously voted to certify the election. The deadline was for today on that, and 15 of 16 counties in Arizona certified. Something that I will say both sides would agree on here, Andrew, is that there were problems on Election Day. It's just the extent of those problems. The Board of Supervisors admitted as such. They talked about how they have started to narrow down what exactly went wrong. They have found out it was a certain type of printer and a certain type of setting that was creating some sort of ink issue that created this barcode issue, and that's what caused those ballots to not be read properly through the tabulation machine. But again, something they stress out is that they have a backup plan for this. Box 3, door 3, that's something you might have heard about for a while now. They've had that for decades here in Arizona when there's an issue with the tabulation machine. You put it in that box, and then it gets tabulated back at the headquarters. It's something they're prepared for. 17,000 votes went through that way. The question is, did those extra lines, because of that, disenfranchise voters? The Board of Supervisors says no.
You know, Steve, that's a common theme we're hearing from some of these individuals who are, making their concerns heard there in that public forum, that they feel as though they were disenfranchised, yet their vote still went through and still counted. Steve, I want to talk about some of the security concerns, especially regarding Bill Gates, Stephen Richer. Reports surfaced over the weekend that they had to, essentially leave their homes because of the threats that they were receiving. Any more on that?
I mean, at this point, I think as you heard in that meeting, there were some indirect threats that were certainly levied. There was a lot of heated conversation with a threatening tone. I think that is fair to say when you listen to the entirety of that meeting. So that is still certainly ongoing at this point. But as far as a number of specific threats, that's unknown about what they're facing. But clearly, these are severe enough threats. They're valid enough threats that the sheriff's office has felt concerned enough to take Bill Gates out of his home on Election Day. So, I mean, that's something I don't think anybody wants. That's not something that should happen in our American society today, and something that needs to stop.
Yeah, so Steve, last word, the canvass is now official. Any recourse for these people who feel that, their voice was not heard, their vote was not counted, or is this it, you think?
I don't think this will be it. No, this will keep going for a while. Interestingly enough, all of the Republican candidates who lost statewide races that have been supportive of these protesters' efforts at this meeting, they were not there, but litigation's already being filed. So no, this won't be the last time we hear about this election. And also, Andrew, only 15 of the 16 counties actually certified the election today. Cochise County did not. The Secretary of State, who is the now Governor-elect Katie Hobbs, has said that she will file a lawsuit to compel that certification. So, no, I don't think this will be the last time we talk about this.
All right, Steve Nielsen there, live for us in Phoenix. Steve, good segue into our next reporter segment. And Steve, thanks so much. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Okay, like I said, a very good segue. We're going to talk about Cochise County momentarily here. Let's throw up this gorgeous Live Now look there in Phoenix. This is South Mountain there from one of our cameras. Just a gorgeous kind of twilight shot there. It's about 5:15 here on a Monday afternoon. Okay, let's get an update. We previewed this a little bit earlier from Fox 10 Phoenix reporter Marissa Sarbeck. She is on what I'm going to call the Cochise question right now. What's going to happen with this canvass deadline in that particular county? Joining us is Marissa Sarbeck, live in Phoenix. Marissa, good to see you. Okay, fill us in. What's going on?
Andrew, at this point, there is really only one county that we are still waiting on, and that is, in fact, Cochise County, the final of the 15 counties here in Arizona to certify their elections. That deadline was 5 o'clock, so it has officially passed here in Arizona. And also at 5 o'clock was the time that the Arizona Secretary of State's office had said they were going to come in and file a lawsuit with the Cochise Superior Court requesting that the court force the Board of Supervisors in Cochise County to certify this election. And this is something that we have seen before in other states. We have not seen something like this in Arizona before, but we sat down with an ASU professor who specializes in public affairs about what we could see happen. And he said we really have two options here. Either the court will go ahead and grant the wishes of the Secretary of State's office, so they will in fact essentially force the hand of Cochise County to certify this election, or number two, that is, the Secretary of State's office will move on without Cochise County and without counting those votes from that county.
The Secretary of State office has until December 5th to collect the 15 counties, and along with the governor, the Attorney General, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, they will certify the state elections.
Cochise County has become an outlier, the only county in Arizona not to certify its election results by today's deadline. And while this is the first time Arizona has dealt with something like this, there have been other instances of it around the country before.
This has happened most recently in Otero, New Mexico, which is a rural county in New Mexico, after they refused to certify the election, their Board of Supervisors, and the next day the New Mexico Supreme Court ordered them to do so.
State elections officials released this statement in response today. Quote, the Secretary of State's office provided supporting documentation that confirmed Cochise County's election equipment was properly certified. The Board of Supervisors had all of the information they needed to certify this election and failed to uphold their responsibility for Cochise voters. Professor Riley says the Cochise County decision could impact the state's entire election.
They run the risk, of course, of one, the court ordering them to do so, or two, of the state moving forward and canvassing and certifying without their vote, which would disenfranchise all their county residents.
in the case of Otero, New Mexico. Professor Riley says the courts actually did push it through the very next day after all of this happened there. So if Arizona follows suit, we could see all of the counties in Arizona certified by the end of the week, even if it is not by their own doing. Andrew?
You know, Marissa, not only Cochise County, there were some rumblings in Mojave County earlier today that they were kind of going to follow the same track. Some of those county board members initially, folded and went with the deadline, but they were worried about, getting arrested for not doing this, for not following the deadline. What do you make of some of the arguments from people who feel that they were disenfranchised, that they don't want this canvass to go forward, essentially saying that, well, the Secretary of State right now is the governor-elect?
We had actually asked Professor Riley about this as well, Andrew, and we said, at this point, Cochise County is commenting on Maricopa County's elections, and they had discussed that in theirs. I'm not particularly sure about Mojave. I've been focusing really heavily on Cochise County today because Mojave did end up certifying, even though they said they essentially had to do it under duress. But with Cochise County making references to what was going on in Maricopa County, Professor Riley brought up a great point. He says what happens here is that our voting system is decentralized. So that means Cochise County is only responsible for Cochise County. Maricopa County is only responsible for Maricopa County, and so forth, of all 15 counties in Arizona. So when Cochise is commenting on Maricopa's, it actually has absolutely nothing to do with that and does not provide substantial information or a reason to make a decision with certifying or not certifying elections in Cochise, because only what you should be looking at is exactly what went down in that specific county before a board of supervisors goes through and makes those decisions.
Yeah, that's right. It's also very helpful to point out that secretaries of state do not count votes, do not count ballots in their respective states. So have you been following as well what Katie Hobbs is saying about this, what Kari Lake is saying about this? We know they have been quite outspoken since that race was declared.
Yeah, Andrew, Kari Lake has certainly spent her focus here, especially on Twitter, really taking aim at Maricopa County. We know that was the last one that we waited for these election results to roll in on. So we noticed that she was really honing in there on Maricopa County. And as you saw from Steve Nielsen earlier today, things got quite contentious inside and outside that meeting. We haven't seen too much talk from her about Cochise County as of right now, but I will say Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, or current Secretary of State, soon to be Governor-elect here, Katie Hobbs, she has kind of referenced Cochise County in terms of that lawsuit. So I did actually just reach out moments before this live shot to the Secretary of State's office and her communications department to get some answers on that lawsuit, because as of now it is 5:20 here in Arizona, and that deadline for them was 5 o'clock when they expected to bring that lawsuit into the Cochise Superior Court. I had not gotten any information or confirmation that it had been done, but we are under the assumption that it has been done because it was expected to be in by 5 o'clock.
All right, we will see what happens with this lawsuit. Marissa Sarbeck, thanks so much. The deadline has passed there in Cochise County, so all eyes there. Marissa, thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.